Hey guys, today we're going to go ahead and set up a DBQ. So if you want to actually do your DBQ along with me and also take a look at a sample, this is the place to do it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. All right, first of all, you should have opened up a DBQ document template that should look something like this. I'll provide one for you guys each time we actually do this. And then from there, we will actually take a look at a sample, not necessarily from the document set, but just to give you an idea, instead of giving you freebies, I want you to be able to evaluate a document separate from what you're getting here. What you have is a DBQ that should look something like this here on railroads and empire building. First thing you should do with the DBQ is to, as best as you can, read the prompt and to try to set the context of what you are discussing here. So here's the prompt itself. Evaluate the extent to which railroads affected the process of empire building in Afro-Eurasia between 1860 and 1918. So you want to be able to set the time period, where you're discussing, and the topics that are at hand to begin. And then from there, be able to figure out the context here. Now, I've provided a few items here that might help in examining the context. So first of which, hey, we have let me get the right colors here. All right, so in this case here, the context, you want to start off with the big picture and the big ideas. Now, I don't want to give you any responses or answers here, but you can get quite a bit from the prompt itself here. So first of all, railroads, it's going to be a clue in terms of the time period if you don't already know it from the date itself here. Again, railroads and the process of empire building. If you're unsure about how to write this, a really good a way to do so is to spend a few moments, at least skim through. So go through your textbook and read the introduction and the conclusions to chapter 15, 16, 17, and 18. You don't have to go through everyone, but you're really bringing in some of the key words, topics like, for example, industrialism, imperialism, and so forth. So keep that all in mind here. Actually, this should be imperialism. Okay. But industrialism would work as well. But again, use these key terms to figure out a big picture. So if you haven't already done so, pause the video right now to try to find some of these big picture ideas. Again, read through introduction, conclusion to get some of those ideas. And then from there, the rest of it is now associating these ideas with one, railroads. So again, apply this to railroads, what they were, okay, the effect, what they did, how railroads changed is the global society and so forth. These are all possible topics you could address here in terms of fitting it in, and then apply this now to uh, empire building in this particular time period, right? So a good question is for both of this, who's involved, okay, where, okay, so again, where are these empires taking place? So again, not just simply Europe as well, but again, in this particular DBQ, think about the other empires that are still in existence, even the ones that are on decline, which is some of the big picture. So there's some clues here, but again, come back to the introduction and conclusion. If you just skim over them, you're going to get some ideas pretty quickly. And that'll only take 5 minutes to do so if you just kind of find the pages and do so. If you haven't already done so, pause the video here. Go to chapter 15 to 18 in your textbook, and as best you can, kind of get a big picture idea of the context of this particular prompt. Okay, go and do that right now. If you're past this, let's go ahead and we're going to work on the document analysis portion of this. And so in doing so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and uh, take a look at a document that's outside of this document set, just so that you're not getting ideas and just simply copying them down here. So what I've done is I have found a document that relates to this particular prompt. So go ahead and if you could go and pause the video right here and go and read this document. So pause the video, read this document, and we're going to use this as a means to evaluate the document and use it for this particular prompt. Okay, if you've read the document, hey, there's a few things you want to be able to do. First of all, with this particular document, what you need to do is provide a short summary. Okay? You do not have much time. Okay? In a normal DBQ, you have 1 hour to evaluate 7 documents and use them to do a number of different things. Okay? In the DBQ that we have, the revised version is 5 documents in 45 minutes here. So, but the same way, about 5 to 10 words that will help you to group this particular document here. Okay, so in this case, the author is advocating the state helps to secure the building of railroads okay, to East African colonies. That might be one way to do it. Excuse the sloppy handwriting here. But again, that's one way. There's probably a little bit more than 10 here. But again, just to get an idea, look, he's advocating for state help, or at least in this case, to secure the building of railroads by his particular company, the East Africa Company here. Okay. So that's basically what you want to be able to do. To summarize this, to give you a quick idea, and not only that, for you to look back at some of the other documents here. And eventually, once you get the full listing here of all the 7 documents, what you're able to do now is to go through and compare. And then hopefully what you're able to do is to group them together. Okay, and so in this particular case, what you want to be able to do now is to find a particular grouping. In other words, how does this apply now back to our prompt of railroads affecting the process of empire building? Okay, and so the argument that can be made from this is really simple, similar to this here. Okay, railroads provide okay, access. So in some ways, you could take a look at this and say, hey, this is access to the empires as a whole. Okay, to look at this and say um, this is a way to hey, generate and to seek new markets, for instance, hey, against other rivals and so forth here. Okay, but either way, railroads provide access to, in this case, new colonies. Okay, that could be a possible way to go ahead and group this, and you'll probably find documents that are similar to this here. Okay, so again, what are the process of empire building and railroads? How do they affect it? Railroads, again, provide access to new, sometimes far away colonies as well. Okay, and that's what you want to be able to do and see if any of the other summaries will match up with this particular grouping. Now, if you get a document that doesn't apply to any of the groups, that's fine. Put it in there anyways. You want to try to use all of the documents or all but one of the documents if possible. Okay. Repeat that, and then you should be good to go. If you can do this consistently and with all or all but one of the documents, you're going to score really well on the DBQ. Then here comes the more difficult task, and that would be to be able to source the document and to find evidence beyond the documents in regards to empire building here. So, sourcing of the document, the looking at the occasion, the author, or the purpose for a particular audience. This document here is littered with possible instances of each one. So let's go ahead and examine possibilities for evidence for sourcing this document here. So as we're reading this particular piece here, as long as we can discuss a number of things here in terms of this particular prompt here, seeking new markets, old ones have been closed to us by hostile tariffs. Okay? So one example of this in terms of the era of imperialism. So when I source this by occasion, okay, he cites this because of new states industrializing, using a state-sponsored industrialism. This is a term we looked at in the previous DBQ. So to examine why does he call for the British state to, in the end, guarantee, in this case, not to provide the capital, but guaranteed the subscribed capital. In other words, the government is going to come in and help to secure um, the cost of building this railroad in case the East Africa Company actually fails. Okay, so in this case here, you're saying, look, the state should play a role in this process because why? Here's the occasion. Okay, new states are using state-sponsored industrialization. So again, that provides and that sources the document based on what's going on during this particular time period. Okay, you can now also examine, okay, why should the state get involved? Why should the British government get involved in this process here? Because okay, the consumer goods, let's see, those who were consumers of our goods are now becoming our commercial rivals the same way. New states that are coming on in the late 19th, early 20th century, Germany, the United States, which had always been a market for British produced goods, had now become key economic rivals. In order to be able to compete with them, uh, uh, you have to be able to build railroads. So again, this is sourcing by looking at the occasion. You can even argue that's purpose as well, but either way, you see it in both influences here. Okay, all right. So in this case here, he is calling for also. Let's see, more deplorable. Let's see. This part here, in terms of talking about the British people capable of dealing with native races and developing new countries, then less expansive than ours. Okay, so in this case, we can discuss the British point of view. Okay, not that this is social Darwinism by any means here, okay, but when we talk about a term from the lecture, if you are there, if you are able to watch it, if you haven't, please go back to this in the imperialism lecture. Okay, the usage of white paternalism as justification for colonizing these particular states. So again, that's one way to source the document using point of view, or what we call the author's perspective here. Okay? And so as a result of this, and these are ways, again, we can source the document. Now, what you want to be able to do is to, if you don't get it for this particular document, hopefully you can do this for a few other ones. Okay? You don't have to do it with each document here, but try to do as many as you can, as much as time can allow here. Okay? And if you needed to, in this graphic, just go and jot some notes for yourself here. Okay? Let's say, for example, a state occasion, state sponsored, industrialized rivals in global trade. Just as a reminder of how you might want to write this later on, if that is the case here. Now, keep in mind with the revised DBQ, we are looking at, again, 45 minutes. And what they're going to expect that you're able to do is you get 1 point for sourcing one document. You actually get a second point for sourcing a second document in this case here. Okay. And then finally, what you want to be able to do once you're able to find categories. So say, for example, railroads providing access to new colonies, or actually new colonies or new parts of an empire. Okay, there are a number of ways you can evaluate this, particularly in the prompt Afro-Eurasia. So a good example of this would be if we talk about large railroads, think about one from our previous DBQ. And if, say, for one way to be able to do evidence beyond the documents is to look and try to find historical examples, real historical examples elsewhere. So a good one for us, perhaps, as an evidence beyond the document, is to take a look at Russia. And Russia's expansion. Where does the Russian Empire, again, we're talking about empire building, how does Russia, for example, reach its far edges of its empire in terms of Siberia, right? And so from here, you can take a look at, again, obviously, there's the term. If you know Siberia, then you can look at the Trans-Siberian Railroad as an example of, in this case, evidence beyond the document. It's not going to be found in a document set that you're going to read, but it addresses, and again, you have to be able to come back to the prompt here. It does address this prompt right here. Railroads affecting empire building. So in this case here, it is a railroad that provides access to new colonies in this case, Afro-Eurasia, within the scope of this particular time period here. It's going to allow for Russia to conquer, supply, and take advantage of the resources in Siberia. That would be an example of evidence beyond the document. Again, it addresses one of the groupings that you've made, okay, but it's not in the document set. So therefore, it is evidence beyond the document set that's provided. Okay, so do this the best you can. This will help to set up the DBQ. If you can pull this together in about 15 to 20 minutes during a DBQ, you are going to be in great, great shape. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to review what you're able to produce later on. So with that, okay,